Analyst Rikki Klieman joins me now to discuss. Boy, Rikki, there's a lot to unpack here. We have the indictment. You know, it seems one of the reporters asked a very interesting question. What's the difference between extortion and simply trying to extract a monetary payment for your client who may have been wronged? And is this a clear case of extortion from what you've seen?
Well, certainly the U.S. Attorney and the special agent in charge of the FBI believe it is a clear case of extortion. There also is a clear defense, which is right where the questioner was at the press conference, which is if a client is zealously represented by a lawyer, which is a lawyer's duty to zealously represent a client, isn't it appropriate to play hardball in terms of negotiations for a settlement? So the defense is going to be, I haven't done anything or said anything that any other lawyer wouldn't say under the same circumstances in order to get the best possible settlement for my client, and that in no way is this extortion. The problem in that defense is what is laid out in the indictment, which is that it appears that although Michael Avenatti certainly had a right to try to settle the case on behalf of a client, that's what lawyers do, but he certainly didn't have a right to be looking for money for himself. And that is what the gravamen, as we would say, the essence of the complaint, yes, which winds up as an indictment in this case. You have to remember, too, the Southern District of New York, they're pretty prudent. They don't go forward just at the drop of a hat. They think about these things.
And to your point, according to prosecutors, he asked for $1.5 million to be paid to his client.
Correct.
And he asked for over $20 million for himself. So that's quite a discrepancy there.
Well, it's bizarre. I mean, if that is in fact how it happened, because if you're asking for $25 million, isn't that because you believe your client somehow deserves that? But it sounds like, and certainly what the prosecutor and the head of the FBI in New York made it sound like, it sounded like this was really a, you pay me this money.
Right.
And we can call it a retainer or call it a settlement, which really makes me queasy that any lawyer would ever say anything like that. And then, you know, oh yeah, my client, 1.5, he'll be fine.
And it's amazing, this all apparently unfolded just days ago.
Yes, it's within a week.
Within a week, all of this leading up to, you know, this is all related to basketball. I guess we should point out that the client apparently was a coach whose team had previously had a contractual relationship with Nike, but had been terminated.
Right, so they lost the sponsorship.
They lost the sponsorship, and according to Avenatti, the client had evidence that one or more Nike employees had authorized and funded payments to the families of top high school basketball players and or their families, and attempted to conceal those payments, similar to conduct involving a rival company that had recently been the subject of a criminal prosecution in this district. So he was sort of threatening, you know, what happened to them is going to happen to you.
Right, that you've been engaging, you, Nike, have been engaging in unethical, if not unlawful conduct, and I'm going to expose this. And why do I get to expose it? Because I am Michael Avenatti, and I know everyone in the press, and you know I know everyone in the press, so I can bring all the power of the media down upon you. And when am I going to do it? I'm going to do it at the time that your earnings report is coming out and at the time of the NCAA basketball tournament known as March Madness.
Timing is everything, as they say. And speaking of timing, these charges came out the same time that California prosecutors announced their case against Michael Avenatti. Clearly, it was coordinated. Prosecutors, admitted to as much. But very, very interesting. That's a very different case. He's facing wire and bank fraud charges there in California. Very broad and misappropriating millions of dollars, not paying a client for a settlement, allegedly.
Pretty as we would say, garden variety. That's become the one of the expressions of the month. But garden variety embezzlement and tax fraud. Not very pretty, certainly something that a lawyer should never engage in, nor anyone else. But this sounds like a pretty straight-up case.
Right.
And also, to me, at least from reading their press release in California, it sounds like it's simple and it's one that they can go forward with easily.
Right.
The New York case becomes much more complicated, even though they have recordings. because there is a defense.
Well, let's talk about the New York case for a moment, because, of course, anything involving Michael Avenatti, there will be questions of political bias, correct? And we should remember that Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, is a Trump ally, and, in addition, the man that President Trump wanted to lead the Cohen case. But there, he recused himself. Should he have recused himself from this investigation?
Off the top of my head, I would say no, because it's completely different, because you're dealing with extortion or allegations of extortion, and you're involving a public company, Nike, certainly a company that is not political in any way.
Sure.
There is an argument to be made that you would have to go through a lot of hoops to get to it, but that Michael Avenatti, people may recall, on behalf of Stormy Daniels, moved to intervene in the Michael Cohen case in the Southern District of New York. At some point, the judge gave Michael Avenatti a choice of actually getting involved in the case in court and stopping his TV appearances, media appearances, or if he wanted to continue to opine on various cable news stations and network stations, that he would then not be a part of the case. So he has had dealings with the Southern District of New York involving the Michael Cohen case, which does involve Donald Trump. So if you wanted to stretch it, I guess you could. I'm not particularly in favor of Jeffrey Berman at first glance. I mean, I've just looked at this as you have, of having a thought that Jeffrey Berman would have to recuse himself. I mean, this is a very different kind of case.
But considering the different charges in these two states, would you say that the charges in California have a better chance of sticking than the charges in New York, simply because, as you pointed out, there is a defense to be made, whether it is a good one or not, there is a defense, and the issue as to whether there may be some political motivation could be brought up by Avenatti's attorneys. So when you look at that overall, would you say that the California case is stronger?
I would say the California case is cleaner.
Right.
That would be how I would phrase it. If the California case is a books and records case, which it sounds like it is, then that's pretty simple. This case is murky because where the line is drawn between negotiation and extortion, it's not like you can draw a bright line. I do think if the recordings are explosive, that's when it goes over the edge. But you brought up the other factor. One is the defense of, I was just advocating for my client, but the other is the defense of, this is totally a politically motivated prosecution, so would say the defendant,
sure,
because I am Michael Avenatti and because I have gone after Donald Trump.
And you can be sure Michael Avenatti's attorneys will bring that one up.
Well, the other question is who's going to ultimately represent Michael Avenatti, because I would think that he could be a rather challenging client.
Absolutely. All right. I do want to read for you the statement that Stormy Daniels tweeted out, I believe, regarding her former attorney, Michael Avenatti. She writes, quote, "Knowing what I know about Michael Avenatti, I am saddened but not shocked by news reports that he has been criminally charged today. I made the decision more than a month ago to terminate Michael's services after discovering that he had dealt with me extremely dishonestly, and there will be more announcements to come. I ask that the media respect my decision to withhold further public comment regarding Mr. Avenatti at this time." So there is more to be said about all of this, Rikki. I'm sure we will hear more from Stormy Daniels in the near future.
Oh, I'm certainly sure that is true.
Rikki Klieman, thank you so much for joining us once again with all your expertise. And we're going to take a short